The red emergency lights flashed eerily through the gloom as Ava slowly peeled her eyes open. A pounding ache throbbed inside her skull as she struggled to gather her scrambled senses. Where was she? She lay prone inside a small chamber lined with sleek metal panels. Dull, reddish illumination emanated from behind grill-like covers set into the ceiling. As Ava pushed herself up with a wince, her hands met a smooth, transparent barrier curving overhead. A containment cell of some kind. Panic fluttered in her chest until training kicked in, quelling the rush of adrenaline. One breath, then another, steadied her racing pulse as fragments of memory sank back into place. She had been outside the ISS on an EVA checking satellite arrays. When? A blinding flare of light, the horrifying collision that sent her spinning helplessly into the void. This wasn't the space station. She was aboard some enormous vessel of unknown origin and purpose. Bracing herself on the barrier, Ava peered out with a stab of dread. Empty corridors stretched away into gloom before branching out of view. No signs of life stirred in the labyrinthine passageways. Where was the crew? Her comm unit emitted only static as she frantically tried hailing the others. No response from mission control either. She was stranded, isolated aboard a ghost ship, adrift in the endless night. The smooth wall suddenly parted with a faint whir, revealing an opening just beyond the confines of her cell. Ava hesitated only a moment before slipping cautiously through, pulling up sensor scans on her arm displays. Life support, gravity plating. It seemed this ship sustained an Earth-like environment somehow. Her boots clicked dully on the metal grating underfoot as Ava made her way down the eerie hallway, vigilantly scanning her surroundings. More bizarre mechanisms and conduits lined the walls, unlike anything from known spacecraft design. It became horribly clear. She was not merely lost, but lost among unknown intelligences in an alien vessel not of human construction. A tattered shred of cloth, snagged on a protruding edge, gave her the first indication that she was not alone. A dark smear stained the panel beneath, and her stomach lurched at the implications. Breaking into a jog, Ava swept the area with every enhanced sensor at her disposal. But the ship remained as still and silent as a tomb. She quickened her pace, following the layout schematics pulling up on her wrist display in search of the control bridge. If she could access the systems, maybe get a sense of this vessel's trajectory or hailing frequencies, there might be hope of contact and rescue, yet. Rounding a bend, a metallic glint caught her eye. Something lay sprawled and unmoving on the grating ahead. Ava froze in her tracks, struggling to make sense of the apparition in the gloom. It was a bodysuit, or what remained of one. Shreds of torn fabric hung from the skeletal framework inside, stained dark in places. With a numb horror, she recognized the markings. It was one of her crewmates, Evans, but the remains inside were barely recognizable as human. Ava stumbled backward, clapping a hand over her mouth to stifle a scream. Gone was any pretense of calm analysis. Only a bone-deep, primal fear took hold. She had to get out, had to warn the others. But there were no others. Only herself, abandoned to this dark nightmare, without end. Whirling, she bolted back the way she had come, careening down the pitch-black corridors with building panic. Nothing could have prepared her for the horrific desecration of her friend's body, or the utter helplessness and isolation that now crushed in around her lungs like the vacuum of space itself. A sharp scraping sound brought her skidding to a halt, gasping. It seemed to echo from everywhere at once, grating painfully across her frayed nerves. She spun frantically, pulse thundering in her ears as her suit's floodlights probed the gloom. Nothing but the same deserted passageway stretching away. Ava backed slowly away, readying a stun pulse from the security rod, holstered at her hip, just as her light swept across an open grate high overhead. Two airy orange orbs gleamed down at her from the darkness above. A shadow detached itself with a horrible skittering sound, launching down upon her with impossible speed and mass. Ava let out an involuntary scream as slicing claws raked across the reinforced plating of her arm, momentum spinning her to the ground. She rolled desperately beneath a swiping talon and came up in a crouch, bringing her security rod to bear on the creature now looming over her in the strobing emergency lights. It was a nightmare given flesh, a distorted melding of limbs and carapace that should never have existed. Bladed forelimbs ended in hooked claws stained dark, and a fanged maw gaped hungrily from a spiked bony crest. With an ear-splitting shriek, it lunged once more. Ava fired the stun pulse dead center into its distended chest, sending the beast crashing, twitching to the floor plates. She didn't wait to see if it would rise again, fleeing back the way she had come, on unsteady legs. Finally, daring to pause and draw breath, Ava found herself outside the chamber where she had first awoken. The smooth barrier had resealed behind her, trapping her in with the thing that had pursued her through twisting corridors, now plunged back into darkness. Wild eyes scanned her flickering displays as oxygen levels critically low flashed a warning. Escape and survival had become an all-consuming drive against unfathomable terror. She had to find answers before it was too late. Had to warn what crew might still live aboard this asylum of the dead, if any yet survived the darkness that had claimed them one by one. As the red glow faded from her vision, Ava slowly regained consciousness to utter darkness. Her suit warned of critical oxygen loss, and she fumbled desperately to initiate emergency repair protocols. With painstaking effort, nanoparticles within the reinforced fabric began weaving themselves together under her skin. A hazy awareness returned as the automated system worked to stabilize her. She lay wedged in an engine passage, cradling a pulverized wrist while her helmet blinked damaged readouts. The creature had nearly finished her. But where was it now? Probing sensors detected no life forms nearby as Ava checked the time. Over an hour had passed in her state of forced hibernation. With a groan, she pushed herself up, limbs protesting the motion, and stumbled down the gloomy corridor. Her thoughts swirled in a fog as oxygen levels gradually replenished. Flashes of the creature's savage assault returned unbidden, its ripping talons biting through armor plate, jaws snapping for her flesh. Somehow she had fought it off using raw instinct, prevailing through sheer panic-fueled strength. Now it stalked these endless halls once more, an invisible killer awaiting its next victim. Ava had to find a means of escape before that moment came, but the ship's systems lay dark and lifeless. With engineering her only remaining option, she doggedly made her way deeper into the vessel's core. Rounding a corner, she froze at a wet smear staining the grated walkway ahead. Fresh blood, still glistening darkly under emergency lighting. A mangled arm lay discarded nearby, identified through tattoos as belonging to Chen, the ship's engineer. Ava swallowed down rising nausea. Chen had been her only hope of restarting systems, of contacting help through whatever FTL convoys might drift in dark space beyond. Now she was truly alone against this alien horror haunting the ship's shadowy hold. Steeling herself, she crested a catwalk overlooking the cavernous engine bay below. Harsh spotlights stabbed through gloom to illuminate towering machinery, but something was wrong. Conduits hung torn and sparking. Core modules lay shattered on the floor in a brutal scene of devastation. A shape unfurled itself from the twisted wreckage with a bone-chilling screech that echoed to the rafters. Armored plating rippled as serrated limbs extended, orienting on her position with preternatural speed. It saw her. Sheer primal instinct took over as Ava scrambled back the way she had come, hearing monstrous claws scrabble in pursuit on the grated walkway. Around another bend, she glimpsed an exit hatch and dove through without hesitation. Her suit sensors flashed proximity warnings as massive talons scraped the closing door mere seconds later. Heart pounding, Ava leaned against the cool metal barricade, gasping for breath. She found herself in some kind of observation lounge, viewing panels looking out over the black gulf of space. At least she had put distance between herself and the thing hunting her through the ship's steel intestines. Right? A scraping sound came from behind, and she whirled with a gasp. Nothing but banks of darkened monitors met her gaze through the gloom. Gritting her teeth, Ava steeled her frayed nerves and boosted visual sensors to sweep the silent room once more. Still, nothing appeared amiss, but she knew all too well that her hunter possessed a lethal stealth its alien nature afforded. Her eyes fell upon an exit across the way, and she made her decision, stealing toward it with sound-dampened tread. Halfway there, a monitor screen flickered to life behind her, illuminating the space in flickering red. Ava froze, breath catching in her throat. Slowly, unwillingly, she turned to find her horrified reflection staring back amid a bank of activated screens. Through the glass, something scrabbled into view behind her. Talons curled around the doorframe overhead as an impossible shadow unfurled to drop silently to the floor, cutting off her escape. Her heart seemed to stall in her chest at the abomination regarding her hungrily in the blood-red glow. Armored plating rippled over corded muscle that tensed for the kill. This was the end. Trapped in a lightless tomb with a nightmare given flesh and out of weapons, options, any hope at all. Ava refused to show fear, squaring her shoulders to face death as she had always known she must, whether by the suffocating vacuum of space or something even less comprehensible. A flicker of movement behind the creature caught her eye. Something drifted past the window, caught in the viewing pane, a remnant of tattered cloth. An idea bloomed, insane, but her only play for survival against the alien terror closing in for the final time. As it lunged, Ava dove to the side and punched her armored fist through the viewport with all her remaining strength. The vacuum howled into the chamber as explosive decompression shook loose panels and equipment. Her suit immediately sealed as she clung to a sturdy stanchion, watching her assailant writhe and screech in agony amid shards of twisting glass. Its armored carapace cracked and crumbled, ripping tissues unable to withstand exposure. Within moments, it was torn apart and sucked screaming into the abyss, vanishing into the eternal night. Ava sagged weakly against the portal, gazing out at the infinite stars glittering coldly beyond. She had survived. But for how long could one lone soul endure this alien necropolis, and whatever other unspeakable mysteries may yet lurk around each darkened corner? Her thoughts drifted as oxygen deprivation pulled at fading consciousness. Somewhere out there, perhaps help might come. Or perhaps this was all that remained, an endless dream of survival amid a spaceship of the dead. The darkness pulled her down once more into its gentle, restless slumber. Thanks for listening to this story. Put a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new stories.